All right, let's see if I can figure out technology here. All right, we got microphone successfully unmuted. All right. Look at that. Icon technology. This is easy. Everyone should do it. All right. This title's a bit wordy, but I included a joke. So if you're going to laugh, laugh with me. All right. So Wernher von Braun was the head scientist of the Nazi rocket program during World War II. His V-2 rocket caused untold destruction across Europe, and it gave way for even greater destruction as science advanced. Shoulder-mounted rockets, you might know it as a bazooka, missiles on planes, boats, drones, satellites, or the ground. And thanks to Oppenheimer's bomb, intercontinental ballistic missiles that can wipe out the entire human race with the push of a button. There's actually a joke about von Braun, and it goes a little something like this. I aim for the stars, but I keep hitting London. Now, von Braun is not the evil mastermind that I made him out to be. Little morally questionable? Sure. But his real dream was of space travel. He even designed NASA's Saturn V rocket, the only rocket that put men on the moon. After his V-2 was successful, he said, the rocket worked perfectly, except for landing on the wrong planet. Now, the real reason von Braun caused so much destruction was because of Adolf Hitler. This lyric says it best. Once the rockets are up, who cares where they come down? That's not my department, says Wernher von Braun. It's not the German pronunciation, but you get the idea. The Nazis said to him, build rockets, or we're going to kill you and make someone else build rockets. And von Braun thought that if he could lay the groundwork for his dreams of space travel, maybe it'd turn out all right. And he did later surrender himself to the Allies to put himself on the right side of history. It is really easy to misinterpret something when you don't know the whole story. And the same is absolutely true of God. For a great many people, they've heard that God is this incredible, awesome, active, benevolent force working throughout his creation. But that idea is not congruent with what they see. Instead, they see wars in Ukraine and Gaza, shootings of Charlie Kirk, Evergreen High School, and all of these so-called Christians who tell them that they're going to burn in hell for having the slightest doubt. Some of them have looked to the Bible to find the truth. And when they made it to Genesis 6, they found the story of the Great Flood, where God killed all of humanity except for 8 people. Genesis 34, 2 of Jacob's sons, Simeon and Levi, decided to commit genocide against the city of Shechem in bloody vengeance. In Exodus, they saw all the plagues God sent upon Egypt. And if they made it to Joshua, then they saw the Israelite conquest of Canaan. Now, there are a lot of asterisks behind this. A lot more full story that I'm not sharing with you. But if you only look at it from that point of view, God and his holy people sure do a lot of killing. Their words don't seem to agree with their actions. There doesn't seem to be much congruence, and there doesn't seem to be much unity. But it hasn't always been this way. In Genesis 2, we see our example. God has completed creation. He constructed the vast array of all the heavens and the earth, and then he took a nap. Quite possibly his greatest creation of all. Adam and Eve, the entire human race, existed in perfect unity and harmony with each other, God, and the entire earth. We don't know how long it was like this. It could have been millions and millions of years while the Holy War went on, and then Satan finally got Eve to sin. And I'll come back to this fall in just a second. For now, let's break down the example. For starters, God is eternal. I'm sure we're all familiar with Genesis 1:1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. He was there before the beginning. And this is going to get a bit nerdy, so I'm going to make this as simple as possible because I don't know the full ins and outs of it. The word for God in Genesis 1:1 is Elohim. That word is plural, but it's God's title, not his name. It's the English equivalent would be God's. And the singular is El. We don't have time for a comprehensive analysis of any of this, so I'm going to keep it brief. Deuteronomy 6:4 says, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. And that word is Yahweh. I don't know why I used 4 letters on the title and vowels in this one. Just felt like being different. That's singular, and that's God's actual name. And I don't think there is or ever should be an English equivalent of this. It's just that. The Trinity is made up of three persons, all distinct from each other, all equally divine, but they're not separate. God the Father, God the Son, God the Spirit. John 1:1 tells us that Jesus, the Word, pre-existed with God in the beginning. He was part of creation. The word for God there is theos, means God. In other words, God is eternal, God is triune, meaning God only needs himself. He still wants to be with us, and I will be eternally grateful for that. But he doesn't need us. Humanity, however, does need God. Acts 17:24 and 25, the God who made the world and everything in it is the Lord of heaven and earth, and does not live in temples built by human hands. And he is not served by human hands as if he needed anything. Rather, he himself gives everyone life and breath and everything else. God gives us our everything. Without him, we're nothing. And God has and always will be happy to fulfill this need. Turn with me to Genesis chapter 5. We're going to read about Enoch. Starting in verse 18. I'll give you just a second to flip there while I scroll through my notes randomly. So, in verse 18, when Jared had lived 162 years, he became the father of Enoch. After he became the father of Enoch, Jared lived for 800 years and had other sons and daughters. Altogether, Jared lived a total of 962 years, and then he died. When Enoch had lived 65 years, he became the father of Methuselah. After he became the father of Methuselah, this is the important part, Enoch walked faithfully with God for 300 years. Altogether, Enoch lived a total of 365 years and had other sons and daughters. Enoch walked faithfully with God, then he was no more, because God took him away. Turn with me again to 2 Kings chapter 2. We're going to talk about Elijah. I'm sure you put together that these two are very similar. Beginning in 2 Kings chapter 2, verse 1. When the Lord was about to take Elijah into heaven in a whirlwind, Elijah and Elisha were on their way from Gilgal. Elijah said to Elisha, "Stay here. The Lord has sent me to Bethel." But Elisha said, "As surely as the Lord lives and as you live, I will not leave you." So they went down to Bethel. The company of prophets at Bethel came out to Elijah and asked him, "Do you know that the Lord is going to take your master from you today?" "Yes, I know," Elisha replied, "so be quiet." Then Elijah said to him, "Stay here, Elisha. The Lord has sent me to Jericho." And he replied, "As surely as the Lord lives and as you live, I will not leave you." So they went to Jericho. And the company of the prophets at Jericho went up to Elisha, and they asked him, "Do you know that the Lord is going to take your master from you today?" "Yes, I know," he replied, "so be quiet." Then Elijah said to him, "Stay here. The Lord has sent me to the Jordan." And he replied, "As surely as the Lord lives and as you live, I will not leave you." So the two of them walked on. 50 men from the company of the prophets went and stood at a distance, facing the place where Elijah and Elisha had stopped at the Jordan. Elijah took his cloak, rolled it up, and struck the water with it. I'm so glad I didn't throw the clicker just now. Didn't even think about that. The water divided to the right and to the left, and the two of them crossed over on dry ground. When they had crossed, Elijah said to Elisha, "Tell me, what can I do before I am taken from you?" "Let me inherit a double portion of your spirit," Elisha replied. "You've asked a difficult thing," Elijah said. "Yet if you see me when I am taken from you, it will be yours. Otherwise, it will not." As they were walking along and talking together, suddenly a chariot of fire and horses of fire appeared and separated the two of them. And Elijah went up to heaven in a whirlwind. Elisha saw this and cried out, my father, the chariots and horsemen of Israel!" And Elisha saw him no more. Then he took hold of his garment and tore it in two. Enoch and Elijah are the only two people in recorded history, I'm very confident in saying the only two people ever, who have never died. Not even Jesus did that. Jesus died and resurrected. It was a big deal for him. But these people were taken from the earth because they walked faithfully with God. Elisha understood that his master, Elijah, was someone special. We don't know how long he spent traveling and conversing before Elijah's ascension. But those places are not a single day's journey apart. The whole time, Elisha is determined to stick close to Elijah and even asks for a double portion of his spirit because he knows what this guy has done. We know significantly less about Enoch. He's mentioned very sparingly outside of what I just read to you. But think of the impact he must have had in his day. If you do up the math in Genesis, Enoch actually ascends to heaven before Adam dies. Do what you want with that information. But there were a lot of people around, reaching almost all the way to Noah's generation, that Enoch could have influenced. And I like to think that he had a great influence on them. Also, Elijah has quite the resume. I got a laser. This is so cool. He stood alone against the prophets of Baal. He announced a drought. Then he announced the end of this drought with the cloud the size of a man's hand that flooded the land. He multiplied olive oil. He raised the dead. He parted the Jordan River, etc. And of course, if this plant will move, he didn't die. Now, that's a joke I skipped. All right, so this is the kind of impact that unity with God has. This is the kind of thing that we can do. Maybe not exactly this, but if we work with God, we can do something truly special. Jesus knew this. In John 17, I won't make you flip there. He says in verse 20, "My prayer is not for them alone. I pray also for those who believe in me through their message, that all of them may be one, Father, just as you are in me and I am in you. May they also be in us, so that the world may believe that you have sent me." Not one of us would be here if it weren't for Jesus. That's the kind of impact unity with God can have. Jesus prays for us, specifically everyone in this room, that we can be one, that we can be in unity as Jesus was with God. So now let's talk about our goal, since I keep bringing it up. We've seen our example to follow, and I'm going to put it back in terms of ancient Israelites. These two gentlemen up front are going to talk about it in more detail regarding us later this weekend. Abraham was promised he would become a very powerful nation. A great and powerful nation whose descendants would outnumber the sand on the seashore and the stars in the sky. By the way, a lot more stars than sand. Check out those numbers. I made sure to put the stars right next to each other. A little bit of formatting to get it like that. A lot more stars. 1 quintillion grains of sand, 1 septillion stars. When was the last time you counted anything in a septillion? That's what God told Abraham his descendants would be like. Not literally that, but you understand the idea. And that's what Israel strove to be, this great and mighty and powerful nation. And sometimes it led them astray. They didn't always understand what God really meant. But when they followed the Mosaic law, they stayed on the right track. Under Joshua, Israel's military was completely unstoppable. So powerful that God even stopped Earth's orbit, probably, the Bible's very vague, but God extended the daylight past what it normally would have been so that Israel could fight and defeat the Amorites. I believe it was the Amorites. I hope I'm not wrong on that. That'd be really embarrassing. Israel's united kingdom under David and Solomon, extraordinarily wealthy, gold everywhere. And King Solomon, wisest king to ever live, because God just up and gave him a wish one day because he was obedient. And then it didn't go so well. As King Solomon found out, this prosperity, not a guarantee. When he disobeyed, it started quite the chain reaction. Israel was conquered by Assyria, Judah was conquered by Babylon, then they were both conquered by Persia. Then they regained their freedom. Then Alexander the Great shut up and said, "Mine," just like the seagulls in Finding Nemo. Then they regained their freedom under the Maccabean revolt. And then Rome shut up and said, "Nuh-uh." And then they destroyed Jerusalem because of the rebellion. And then etc. Because Israel's had quite a long history after that I don't have time to get into. Oh, there's another joke that I'm going to skip for time. So, when King Solomon was obedient, everything was prosperous. When he married 1,000 women, took up their idols, and dragged his nation down with him, it was not so great. Lots of people will tell you about this cycle of judges. You probably can't read that text. Israel serves the Lord. They fall into sin and idolatry. Israel is enslaved. They cry out to the Lord. This dadgum plant in the way. Again, God raises up a judge, then Israel is delivered. It's not a cycle. Downward spiral. These are just the names of the judges. You know who they are. Each cycle of sin, distress, and crying out in salvation leaves Israel in greater darkness. In Judges 1, Israel enslaves their enemies instead of completely driving them out. And so an angel shows up, and this angel says, "Why are these people still here? You had specific orders." So Israel offers sacrifices. But from there, the next generation doesn't know God. And so they just keep getting worse and worse and worse and worse and worse until by the end of this, a concubine is sent out by her husband to be gang raped, killed, and then he decides to cut her into 12 pieces and mail her out to each tribe of Israel. The tribe of Benjamin rebels and is almost completely wiped out. And this is also around the time of the late Bronze Age collapse. Basically, all the nations of the ancient Near East just started declining all at once, and we're not really sure why. The one thing that is clear about Judges, a lot of division, a lot of violence, not a lot of unity. In the Garden of Eden, there was perfect unity. God served as our example. Israel prospered when they were obedient. But when unity died, it all got so much worse. Israel strove to be the nation God promised to Abraham, and prospered. But when division struck and violence became the law of the land, every man did what was right in his own eyes, and chaos ensued. Once again, Jeep, Solomon, and Aiden, who couldn't be here because he had a prior commitment, but he will be on Sunday. We'll talk a little bit more about this, and specifically how it relates to all of us. What you need to take away from this is that humanity started with the perfect unity, sin and disobedience ruined it, and that God can still serve as our example. We still know who to follow. We still know what to do. It's just a matter of doing it. This felt really fast, but that's all I got. Thank you so much for listening. I don't entirely remember what I wrote down for an invitation, but if you'd like to